All right. Hey, everybody. Um, Still waiting on a couple that looks like they're trying to join the call, but we'll go ahead and get started. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Brian Haley. I'm the producer of Church Juice. Today I have, so let me step back. So we've been doing a regular call, started about a month ago, maybe a month and a half ago. Um, Doing an every afternoon Zoom call with church communicators. Um, and so we did that for a few weeks. And then I think last week we went to Tuesday and Thursday because we realized that the uh, the phase of ministry had changed from crisis mode to kind of long-term solutions. So we want to make sure that we're still providing an opportunity for you guys as church leaders, church communicators, staff and volunteers, um, to have that place for community and a place for us to problem solve and brainstorm and pray for one another. But I also don't want to overburden you with more meetings because I get it. So traditionally, it's been kind of just an open floor. We've allowed for half an hour of discussion and prayer together. But one question that I've been getting probably even more common in the last month or so is circling around the topic of church websites. So now that churches are realizing the importance of technology now and what that means, they've realized the importance of their church website as well. So I've been getting a lot of questions about those, and I've met with a lot of churches about their website in the last month. But I thought it would be a good opportunity for us to have a conversation just about websites today. So how should things be different in this phase of ministry? And even the basics, like why do we need a church website, or what is the most important part of our website? So I asked Chris, who is a new friend of mine, to come on the call today. He runs a company that does websites mostly for churches, and he's here in West Michigan along with me. And Chris, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure, yeah. Glad to talk with you today. My name is Chris Decker. I'm a Christian Reformed brother of yours. I go to Hillcrest CRC in Hudsonville, and I'm born and raised in the Christian Reformed Church. So I understand the challenges that face ministry, not just from the perspective of a web developer, but also from the perspective of a member, having grown up in it and seeing the challenges that congregations face on a very specific level. And then also I understand the theology and stuff. It gives me a unique lens into what web ministry is, how it functions. And I've always thought it's important. Maybe I'm biased, but now everybody thinks it's important the last few weeks because suddenly it's one of the biggest resources that we have to reach our congregation. So I'm glad to be here today.
Yeah, so most of you that I see, at least, are Christian Reformed. So Church Juice is part of the Christian Reformed Church, which is a denomination that's headquartered here in Grand Rapids, where I'm at, and is a binational denomination. So some of you I know that are on the call are actually in Canada too. But we also have a lot of our audience is not CRC, is not Christian Reformed. So just wanted to kind of make that connection for you guys who don't really know probably even what Christian Reformed is. I didn't until I started here. So it's just a denomination that Church Juice is a part of. It funds what we do so that we can do everything for free. So if you have questions while we're talking, while Chris and I kind of have a discussion, why don't you throw it in the chat, and I'll try to answer those or throw them into the discussion. And then toward the end, I think I'll open the floor, depending how things go, and allow you guys to take part in the conversation as well, okay? So Chris, one of the main questions or most common questions that I get is people wanting me to kind of evaluate their website. So when you're working with churches, what would you say is the most common issue that you see with most church websites?
Yeah, I don't know if I could have answered that 5 years ago before I started the business, or 6 years ago now, because it varies so widely depending on the church's demographic and location, everything like that. But I would say one of the main problems I see as a whole is that I'm ADD, so it's going to be tough for me to keep my thoughts succinct because it's such a complicated topic. But most church websites don't have an identity that actually tells the people who they are or what they do or what differentiates them from any other church in the area. Not even denomination to denomination, but church to church. So here in Hudsonville, as you may know, there are tons of Reformed and Christian Reformed churches. And what's the difference between Hillcrest in Georgetown CRC and Emmanuel CRC? And I could go on, all of whom are within a square mile of one another.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to comment on their websites or anything like that, but I would guess that for many churches, when you put 3 websites or 4 websites next to each other, it's going to say something like, we believe in Jesus, we have a warm fellowship. I mean, these are warm and fuzzy feelings. They're great, right?
Right.
And these are all things that we should communicate, but they don't actually tell anybody about that church or what's different. And whether we like to be or not, as church leaders, don't take this in a business sense so much, but we're in sales to a certain extent. We're not in sales for big money and membership, hopefully, and stuff like that, but we're in sales to create disciples. And the only way we can effectively do that is if we realize who our target audience is, and then how to create a sense of the uniqueness of our own ministry to them, and what Christ might do in our church, and then communicate that not in thousands of words of text, but in how the site is laid out, so it's an experience that people can go through when they go to the website.
Yeah, we spend a lot of time talking about branding or a church's identity. And I see that all the time. Churches, they want to think often, even, my own church, we want to think that we appeal to everybody or that our target audience is everybody. But in reality, we attract a certain type of family or person in a specific area, probably. And so realizing what our identity is really important, I think, too. So what would you say is the number one priority with the church website?
That's again a complicated question, but I would say it's communicating who you are to people, and we can use it, of course, as a tool for members. We can have a membership section that has prayer requests and online giving and stuff like that. But I think the main purpose, at least what I hear from most churches, and I think it's accurate, is the newspaper ad. That when I delivered papers, I'm 34. I delivered papers. I got up at 6 o'clock in the morning when I was 12 through 16, and made tens of dollars per month, doing that. And when I did that, there was a huge page. I think it was 2 pages with these little ads for churches. You probably remember these, right?
Yeah.
We had just hundreds of ads in Grand Rapids here. And that's not there anymore, of course. And so the way that we can reach the public is through the website. So the website has to reach them in a way that makes them want to actually come through the door. I had a church pastor ask me once, who didn't end up hiring my company. I'm not surprised by it, but he asked, how many members do you think I can expect to gain by me putting up a website? And I went like, oh boy. If you think a website is suddenly going to translate to hundreds of members joining the church, there might be a fundamental misunderstanding of the mission of a website and the mission of church. But unless your website creates value to potential church visitors, they simply won't come through the door, and you'll never have the opportunity to greet them. So your website is that first response, much as the paper ad was 20 or 30 years ago. So I would say that's for most churches the main purpose, and I think a pretty intelligent one.
Yeah. So when you start a conversation with a church, what are some of those first questions that you try and ask to help them figure out what the best solution for their website is?
Yeah, when I started the business, back when I didn't know about anything, I would start with what pages do you want on your website? Do you have a logo? Do you have a domain? Do you have an existing website? And then I realized that the product that we were creating wasn't really that interesting, and it wasn't nearly the fullest that it could be, because most churches, and this is kind of a sad thing, something I lament and I hope can improve, but many churches cannot answer, what is your mission statement? How do you employ it? Do you have a vision statement or some way, some strategy of reaching the community? What are your principal ministries? Some of these basic, fundamental, like strategic planning questions. Because if you can't answer those, you can't write them. You certainly aren't going to be able to articulate them efficiently and succinctly on a website
Yep.
if you can't answer those questions. So we start, I think, not even anywhere in the realm of web development. We just start in identity and what is your mission? What are your values? And then from that, that's the only way you can possibly ever come up with a great outcome that truly reaches people in a way that makes your ministry unique. So you got to know yourself in order to communicate it.
So one thing that you mentioned a few minutes ago is that churches used to advertise in the newspaper, but now the website has kind of taken the place for that. So basically, Google is the new newspaper classified section, essentially. So would you say um, that a first-time visitor is more important for a website than a member, like someone who is already part of the church? And how does that play into what the church's mission, vision, and values are? How does that communicate differently based on what that audience should be?
I don't think it's an either or thing. If we look at how most people will approach and use a website, most members, after they become a part of the community, aren't going to go on the about page to see what your vision is.
Right.
If you're effective on Sunday morning and through your ministries, hopefully they already know that. And so you really don't have to aim a lot of that stuff at them because they've gotten beyond that point. That's no longer information that they're going to use on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can build the website in a way that is simultaneously useful as a newspaper ad, like we've spoken, and like a thing that reaches community, and also effective for church members. And so many church websites, and maybe some of yours, have a members section that's useful to them, that's useful for sharing documents, or maybe there's a directory that's password encrypted for online giving. Maybe there's a sermons library there that's either public so people can listen to it, or maybe it's private. But I think you can use it as a resource as well as like a newspaper ad type of thing. And then you can also use it to push people towards community-based things,
Mm-hmm.
which is where social media comes in as well.
Okay. So one of the points that I try to push when I am talking with churches is that if we try to communicate to too many audiences at one time, we're effectively communicating to nobody. So what I have found, and I'm basically asking you to disagree with me and prove your point, is that when church websites have a member section or a password protected section, that's a big turnoff for a first time visitor. So how do you reconcile those two and make it work for your website?
No, I think that's a great point. I'll try to disagree with you in some way just because you asked me to, maybe. But if you have a member section, I think there's a way that you cannot seem standoffish by when people click on members. The term members, first of all, I'm a traditionalist to a certain extent, so I'm not put off by the word member.
Mm-hmm.
But I realize that I'm not everybody, and a member seems exclusive. And so
Right.
there's other ways you can title that particular page. And And then when people click on that page, the members page, whatever you want to call it, we can also give them some sort of introductory message that still is aimed at visitors, or is worded in such a way that it's not like you can't see this because you're not one of us or something like that, while still not limiting the church congregation
Right.
from stuff that membership or non-members really shouldn't see, like directory addresses and
Right.
pictures with names on them, or some of these touchy subjects.
Okay. So another question that I get probably more often than I even can remember is from church pastors or staff who, especially in the last 6 weeks, now understand the importance of a church website, but we don't have the time or the skill set or the knowledge to make what we know is important out of the website. So to make that a priority or to make it even look good. So what do you suggest for people in those situations? Often they're in a small church, so they can't go hire a custom website designer to build a $10,000 website for them either. So
Right.
what would you suggest?
I think first of all, it's just about knowing your manpower. If you have, there's a Presbyterian church in Ohio that I'm working with right now. We're updating their logo and stuff, and they have a lady who I think is in her upper 80s. I've never met her, but by the sound of how she speaks on the phone, I think she's fairly elderly. She is the person that's updating the website. She has trouble with email, and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so when we're working with her on building a website, which we did a year ago or so, we got to think like, okay, who's going to be editing this on a regular basis? Is it Alice? Alice is an awesome person, super gifted, but don't use like WordPress or something like that with Alice. Use like Squarespace, something that's really simple, that all she has to do is like log in. If she can remember her password and stuff, Alice is set. She can go into that content management system, click edit, and then update text.
Right.
So first of all, know your manpower, and don't choose a platform, assuming you haven't already chosen one, that is going to be unmanageable. Because to have a great looking website that's so complicated that it exceeds your manpower, that is worse almost than not having a website, because it'll become outdated. And then as a staff person, you'll find yourself more inclined to clean toilets than to update the website. That's not a good position you want to be in. So you have to set the stage well. And also, I think the question is, how do we intend to use the website? And is it something that we're going to need to update on a regular basis? If so, that's great. But make sure, again, that you have somebody that's going to be dedicated to that is good at organization, at follow through. And it's not somebody, again, that doesn't have the capability of doing that. If you do have a limited staff, then perhaps you need a website on a pretty basic platform that doesn't have to be updated on a regular basis. That's great, but it doesn't contain dates and information that are going to leave you in a lurch in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, and I saw him on here. Where'd he go? Doug, I met with you last week, and we kind of talked about the same thing, right? Just about what you can handle, figure out what you can handle long term and what that looks like. So yeah. So I did get a question from Heather in the chat, and she asked, and then I'll ask her question, and then we can move on to more coronavirus specific information about websites. But Heather asked if she could see, or maybe we can list in the chat some examples of good websites that you would recommend. So think about that while we're talking, and probably easier just to add the links in the chat there. But yeah.
Yeah, it's okay. I'll write them down as we're chatting, and then I'll
Yeah.
come in a few minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. So I wanted to talk a little bit specifically about this season of ministry that we're in, because for one, a lot of churches have realized that now websites are important, and maybe we were behind the ball on that, those types of things. But what goes into our website right now probably looks different than it did 2 months ago. So I'm curious what you think a church website should be changing to reflect the season that we're in.
Yeah, right. I think one of the big silver linings, and some days it's tougher to find these silver linings because at least in Michigan, we're all cooped up at home. And I have 3 kids that I'm constantly fearing are going to rush upstairs and fight, like right here, and you're going to see it. So there's a number of different parameters we're dealing with. But
Yep.
the big silver lining is that churches are suddenly aware that the ministries that they're engaging in and doing every week can't be confined to the 4 walls of the church, that they have to be out. And it's forced us in a really healthy way to do ministry on Facebook, which is awesome. So instead of my feed being consumed by stuff like people eating their cereal and what they're going to have for lunch and stuff that doesn't matter, now I'm seeing people express their faith on Facebook, which is a really cool thing. Facebook and social media is something that's pretty quick. You can change your strategy pretty quickly. Websites are more difficult because most churches don't have the tools they need. That their website maybe not is built on the right platform. To go back to our earlier conversation, so if you want to add some things that are really important, like online giving or something, it's not something that many churches can do in the next 3 hours. They have to contact somebody or
Right.
call support or something like that. So again, I think finding the right partner to help you accomplish some of these goals, or making sure that you have a platform that is flexible, moldable, and something you can grow into is important. So that the important things right now are online giving. I've been contacted by probably 20 churches in the last 2 weeks that suddenly have an emergency to start up online giving. They've been thinking about it for years, but now it's important because people aren't there to give on Sunday morning. There's no offering anymore. That's important. A connection to social media is very important. So Facebook icons and logos, so that when people visit, they have somewhere to go for this community aspect, which websites aren't as good at social media. And live stream. Oh boy, that has been a big thing the last few weeks. People can't meet in person.
Right.
So how do you live stream? Is it Facebook? Is it YouTube? Is it Vimeo? Is it some other platform? Is it just going to be audio? Are you going to use Zoom? Strategizing about some of these things are suddenly so important. And it's my hope that all of these silver linings, these things that we've been forced to learn, probably against our will in certain circumstances, will stick with us, because ministry will be so much better off in the United States if we can continue to engage these things as if the coronavirus was always here, even after it's gone, hopefully.
Yeah, definitely. Rick, I cannot find your website, but I was going to add it to the chat. Can you? So you need to work on your SEO, but can you put the link in the chat? Yeah, I think what I have seen over the last several weeks is this realization that that our website is super important, and now we're trying to force people, or maybe they just naturally come to our website more often, and so we also realize how outdated, or all of these different elements that we'd never really thought of about our website need to be updated or changed. So.
Right.
So what would you say is, for right now in this season, what is the major priority that we need to be focusing on our websites?
I could answer that 2 ways. One would be pragmatically, just go back to setting up some of these tools that people really need to be able to communicate with their church, like online giving and live streaming and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Theologically, ministry-wise, I think it's important to communicate love and comfort. And in a way, many of you could answer these things better than I can, because I'm a web developer and a worship leader, not a pastor, not an ordained
Right.
person. But the society and membership just needs comfort and love. And this is an opportunity to show people that the church is not, in the CRC maybe in particular, because most of us are CRCers, that we're not stuffy people that read the Bible the whole day and don't watch TV, and we're not monks. we're people that love and care, and we want to minister to others. And through the language that we use, which goes back to our comment about knowing your mission, I think there's a tremendous opportunity, more than ever before, through the words and how we use our website to reach some of these people that frankly wouldn't have been interested in even being reached before.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So, so Antoine, you asked if we can give webs or feedback to websites. If you want to send me an email, we definitely don't have time in this call to do website evaluations, but if you send me an email with your website, I can send that on to Chris, or together we can do an evaluation or something like that. So anybody's welcome to do that. My email, easiest to remember, is info@churchjuice.com. Send it there and that'll come to me. But we have a little bit of time left. I wanted to open the floor now, see if anyone else has questions or things that you'd like to either get off your chest or just kind of inquire about, for Chris, for me, for the group. Yeah, what questions do you guys have?
I think they both of you hit the nail on the head, and I've been doing this in 2 or 3 different churches. My first attempt at this was with a great 20-year-old back in 2001, and we had a kick-ass site that we haven't duplicated since, in terms of promoting and connecting, and we didn't know that. But on some levels, what I'm realizing, even as I read through this, I have website envy, because I know people have more money to put into it and create it in a way that I like, and you can't do. We're on WordPress, and I'm going, we can't do what I want. But I think you're right. It gets down to who are you and what are you trying to communicate as the door in, and that communication level inside for people who need information, but also people outside who need information. And that's going to be a very pragmatic thing. Who Rick is in Michigan isn't what Brian is in Michigan, and you're right next door, neighbor each other, swing a cat and you hit each other's stuff. You're serving some ways the same clientele, but you're not.
Yeah.
Right.
In Ontario, I know Doug's in Toronto and Heather's in Burlington. Similar beasts, not that far apart, but they're very different dynamics of who you are. And on some levels, it's me letting go what I want and what is needed, because ultimately this is still secondary communication effectiveness than word of mouth will ever be.
Right. Yeah, I think sometimes it's helpful too to get a third-party evaluation, like some of you, Antoine, I think you had requested. And that doesn't have to be done by a professional or something. It's almost helpful, even more helpful, to ask a friend that doesn't go to the church, or somebody that doesn't even have any Christian faith, something like that, to just, like, when you go to the website, what are we saying? Within the first 10 seconds, can one determine who you are, what you stand for? Because remember, people aren't going to sit there for 3 minutes and dig through your content to figure out who you are and how you're different from the church down the street. They have to know that pretty quickly, and how the website is structured, even how the menu looks, what banner picture is on there, what second tier buttons and stuff, like learn more, where are they going for that, and what does that say? These are things that, kind of like an elevator pitch, when you're in an elevator with somebody and they ask what you do or something like that, they don't want to hear a 5-minute response. They have to know within 30 seconds or so what you do, or else they're going to lose interest permanently. And a website is the exact same way. And Alan, I think, brought up a number of great points. I would challenge, though, too. Website development 10 years ago was very expensive, because there weren't platforms that were available that we can create great websites for little money on. But technology has come such a long way that there are some do-it-yourself platforms, which are still above the capabilities of some churches, but there are many companies too that will create great websites for very little money. It's not $10,000 anymore like it was 10, 15 years ago. And so I would call somebody in your area, or call me or somebody else, just to see what the pricing actually is, because you might be surprised.
Yeah, definitely. And I mentioned Doug earlier because he's the most recent person that I talked to about websites, and I think that may have even been this week. I can't remember. But we looked at three or four different solutions, and they varied kind of across the board quite a ways from basically free to thousands of dollars at a time.
Yeah.
So websites can cost you as much or as little as you want to spend, basically.
Yeah, the way I started my company too, and many of you will resonate with this, was I worked at a congregational church that you'll get a kick out of this. That had a really, really embarrassing website, and it was kind of a thriving church. They were doing pretty well, but if you go to their website, it was so bad. Like the whole content management system was bad, and like a quarter of the words were misspelled or capitalizations just throughout paragraphs at random spots. And so I challenged this like the first week I got there as worship director. I was 20 years old, by the way, so probably not as tactful and careful with how I approach things as I am now. Um, and I quickly learned that that website had been given by a family who lost a kid in a car accident. Very sad situation. The family donated the money for the website. So this website was kind of surrounded by this. You can't touch it. That's like the gravestone of this child. And then the brother of the child, who was, I don't know if he had Asperger's or something, but he had some, mental limitations that, for me, I hope this doesn't sound unpastoral, but he had many gifts, but I don't know if website maintenance was one of them. And so it's just an incredibly complicated situation. And we somehow kind of moved it into a healthier spot where he was still involved, but maybe not doing everything. And we got 3 quotes for a new website from different companies in Grand Rapids. And my company wasn't involved or wasn't open at that time, so I wasn't one of them. The first quote was like $14,000, and the church just couldn't even look at the proposal at all because it was so far outside of our price range. The second one was like 6,000, which was still way too much. We looked at it, but we really couldn't consider it. And the last one came in at 3,100. And we thought like, oh, praise the Lord. We still don't have 3,100, but we'll fundraise it. We'll find the money for it. And we got that website up. They just took it down about a year ago, lasted a long time. But we had such terrible service from the company, and they didn't understand churches at all. And they didn't go through any of this mission stuff that we're talking about now. And it was just a really sour process. But we got something that we could afford. And that 3,100, still, you should never spend that much on a website, even to have it professionally done. You can get it done for a whole lot cheaper than that and have a really incredible product. So call around or something if you're fearful of the cost, and you might be surprised with what you find.
Heather, you had unmuted yourself. Do you have a question or something to add?
Of course I do, Brian. I just was wondering, so I think the struggle, we have a pretty half-decent website. The struggle is to get our members to use it. So I don't know if you have any suggestions on that. We also have a private members Facebook page that if you were to search it, you can't find it, but I highly recommend that. It's very effective as another form of communication. And I often will repost, I put together our bulletin and do a lot of our communications, and I'll repost, kind of highlight things there just to make sure that people have seen it, or just to generate conversation. So yeah, I guess the two things I'm thinking about is, one is how do you get your, you've spent money or somebody spent effort to put this website together. How do you get your members and your traffic driving there, not just for seekers, but for people to kind of utilize the links and stuff you put on there with good meaning. There's often a resources area. The other thing is, what's your take? You've mentioned social media, but like, where should you put if you're starting off delving into the world of social media, where should you put your efforts?
You want me to answer, Brian, or do you want to
Go for it?
Okay. Well, Heather, what is your goal? Like, what are you trying to drive people there for? You say that you'd like them to use the website. What are your goals in a perfect world? How would they be utilizing it?
I guess to realize all the resources that are there, because there is quite a lot of really great resources. Also, it helps remind them of, like you said, there's mission stuff, and I think we're working on some of that. We're in a bit of a transition right now, but it kind of does help remind them of who we are as a church. It is sort of a great picture, especially at times like this when we're not able to gather. It does help remind who we are. So.
Mhm. Yeah, I think the good news is that there are several ways that you can change that in a fairly short-term way. The bad news is that congregations that don't engage with their website, very much that's a cultural thing from the church. And as we all know, cultural things are slower things to move. They're not something that we do in a day. People just aren't used to it, so you have to change their habits. Kind of like changing where they sit in the sanctuary or something. It's just not something that's done over the course of a week. But one way that I've found to be somewhat effective is to, if you want people to be driven to the website, then whatever information we're wanting to drive them to, we can't also provide elsewhere. We have to force them in a healthy way to actually engage in that information. So if there's, I don't know, you name it, whatever files you want to put on there, whether it's stuff about missionaries or committee memberships or directories or prayer requests, if you're feeding that information multiple other places, the chances that you're going to get a congregation, especially if it's an older one that might have certain habits, to get them out of that, if you're also providing it somewhere else, I think is going to be an uphill battle. We tried this and fairly successfully at Hillcrest. We were printing, just thousands and thousands of papers every week for announcements and things like that. And I pushed us to put it in a weekly email, gather everyone's emails, and then that information is posted on MailChimp. I don't know if you've heard MailChimp before, but it's a really effective platform for communicating without having to have a lot of technical design skills. And then we'd also put that on a section on the website where people could go see and check in on what's going on. And the big argument, pushback, it was a pretty animated staff meeting as we all debated the pros and the cons of this, was that, well, people aren't going to look at it. They're not going to know what's going on. I said, yeah, if we're really creating value in our ministry and it's something that they really want, they'll find it. If they don't want to take the extra click, then maybe we need to reevaluate what we're doing because maybe they don't find it valuable or we're not hitting our target or something like that. So that's one way that we did get people to go to the website. So now every Sunday we have a order of worship, and then on that it says, I think we have 10 highlights or something like that. Here's what's coming up this week. For more information on XYZ, watch your weekly email or go to XYZ page. We link that with our social media through strategic announcements too, but I could go on forever about that as well.
Yeah. The one thing that I wrote down a couple things while I was listening to you, Heather, but regarding your website and getting people to use it, what I wrote down is that we have to give people a reason to go to the website. So if I'm already part of the church, why do I need to go to the website? I already know when services are. I already know what the dress code is. I already know all of these things. So why am I going to the website? If you give me a reason to go to it, especially right now, if you give me a reason to go to the website, I'll go there. So I've said this a few times in our calls, but I am the media director at Friendship Church here in West Michigan. And a few months ago, I pitched the idea, or what was my plan, and that was to push all of our content to the website. So our central place of information was going to be our website. And most of the staff thought I was crazy and that it would never work because it's a very traditional type of congregation. But suddenly, come mid-March, everything's on the website, and guess what? People are actually going there to look at it. And I haven't received a single complaint since then either. It's crazy. So if we give people a reason to go to the website where all of our content is there, it's being updated regularly with devotionals or articles or missionary updates or whatever it is. If we're pushing people there because there's stuff there for them to interact with, they'll start to use it. Now, most of the time it won't happen so drastically like it did in my case because we're changing culture, but I just happen to time it somehow correctly. As far as Facebook groups, the way that I have found Facebook groups to work well is, even like you were saying, Chris, even with the things that we're posting there, that should point back to your website. So your email content, your social content, anything that you're doing should point to your website, because that's where all of the information should live. So you may put in the bulletin, probably not right now, but whenever you have a bulletin again, you may put, we have a daddy-daughter date this Friday at 7 p.m. But to register or to get more information, you have to go to the website to figure out what that is. So they're getting the details, but to actually get all the information they need, they have to go to the website or whatever that is for you.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think, again, just to add to what Brian's saying, which I agree with everything, it's pulling back and asking that strategic question of, what are we trying to say? What are we trying to communicate to them?
Mm-hmm.
And then what is the easiest form that we have to communicate to them where they already are?
Right.
Is it a bulletin? Probably not,
Right.
because at the time when they're reading it, they're listening to the prelude or they're talking to their friends or whatever. Basically, you've confined yourself to 5 minutes of surface level engagement. But if you're able to push that to Facebook, where most of them already are, and then, like Brian said, and then drive them to a more static content-based thing like a website, that's meeting them where they are. They're not having to contort their communication practices for you, but you're changing it so that you're meeting them again where they are.
I have a question, actually. We at our church in Smithers, BC, we've been pushing people to use the Bridge app. So a lot of the stuff is for online giving and announcements and prayer requests, and all of that stuff is going onto the Bridge app. But now we're also looking at our website, because the Bridge app is limited to members, right? We have a lot of attenders who don't have access to the Bridge app. So how do you balance, like, we've been really pushing the Bridge app. So it's like, how do you balance that with the website now? And I didn't even know. I don't know what to do.
Not sure I'm gonna find my ideal gig.
Great question.
Hang on one second.
Because we're not as susceptible as sophisticated New Yorkers to.
All right. Had to figure out where that noise was coming from. So I did see, I don't know if he's still on the call or not, but Ken, who is part of the Bridge app, was on the call earlier, so he may be able to help answer the specific Bridge app question. But Chris, I'll let you, I'm not sure if he's actually listening or just kind of in the call, so I'll let you kind of talk a little bit about what you think there.
Yeah, sure. I mean, one of the goals probably for you, Stacy, and many others is to double up your efforts where you're having to copy content from a billion places, and that's becomes kind of a rat race almost. And so I don't know a ton about the Bridge app. I've monkeyed with it a few times, but I believe there has to be a way where you can push some of that information. Maybe there's a way that you can push that information through embedded code where it appears on your Bridge app and then can be also placed on your website. I don't know if that's an option, but I would look into that. That would be the first thing I would do. And if you don't understand what I'm saying there, like, there are many platforms that you can put content on that platform, and then through code, kind of like you do it when you want to embed a Google Calendar somewhere, that information that you put on the Bridge app, for example, would automatically push. So it would appear in two places at once, even though you only edited it once. That's what I would first look, see if the Bridge app has that functionality, because then you're putting it in two places that people, you want to drive them towards without having to recreate and double up all your work.
Yeah, especially right now, I would not be doubling up any work if I could get away with it. So Ken, I saw you unmuted yourself.
Let's see how this works. Are you hearing me, Brian?
I am.
Okay. All right. Sorry, folks. I've got a bit of a wonky internet connection, so I didn't want to press my luck. Stacy, I don't know if this will address your need, but are you using the Bridge app? Are you using MailChimp and other forms of communication, and then the automatic feed that can have into the Bridge app. So very similar to what Chris was saying, where you're using multiple, you're taking one way of posting, but it's heading out in multiple directions. And what that's doing is it's covering you as you go through this time of transition, as some people will be using one platform, but they'll be moving toward others. And so you do kind of need to straddle 3 or 4 different platforms with a lot of that communication.
Gotcha.
Yeah, no, we are only just basically have 3 of us who post announcements or whatever on the Bridge app. And so we're not using any other platform with it.
Yeah, so that might be an answer or a way to handle that a little bit. Ray, I know you've been trying to
No.
ask a question.
I'm retired. I've got all the years. But our problem here in Toronto is that everybody wants to get into the act. 10 years ago, before I came to this church, there was a Joomla site, and they also had Google Apps, and there was dashboards. So there was something for the world out there, and there was something for the members, and of course that kind of died. And then somebody decided to get a Bridge app. So now we have a Bridge app, and now recently someone is using Wix to have a blog. So if our congregants are getting a little dizzy with all these, and somehow we need to harness all that energy, and we will. But what is certainly, in the G Suite now, you have sites. So for a member portal, we can use that, and that's certainly been enhanced. There's some limitations, but so I mean, the thing, Stacy, to remember about Bridge apps, it's for a mobile app. It's not, you can't put it on your desktop. You can put it on your tablet, you can put it on your phone, but you can't put it on your desktop. And most of our folks, they go to website. They know how to find something on the website, and all you have to do is click. And yeah, for Bridge, you need a mobile app. And of course, there's no archival possibilities with it, and it costs $800 a year for us, so pretty expensive.
Yeah, I think the churches that I've seen have the most successful web presence. And when I say web presence, I mean social media presence, website, apps. I mean, the whole combinations are the ones that have, doesn't have to be a full-time staff member, but either a well-equipped layperson that is organized and isn't going to fade off and go to college in 3 months and then they're gone and nobody can figure out what to do. I've seen that happen a billion times. Or a staff member that is interested and able, or at least willing to learn and equipped to learn, and having that person drive the conversation. Doesn't mean that person makes all the decisions, but the biggest disasters I've seen in these, and I've worked with a lot of churches that don't take my advice, which they don't have to. It's fine. I'll work with them however they want. But they end up having...
I never get that, so I don't know.
Well, I mean, I had a Reformed church in New York. I won't mention the town and stuff because it's probably the only Reformed church in that town in New York. But they had a committee of 16 people that would reply all with just dozens of emails all the time. And it was impossible for them to keep track of any conversation. And then they would argue with each other about what we were going to do with certain situations. And then there were probably 20 or 25 different content contributors for the different pages, and everybody had different differing abilities to write content, and it was just this huge cluster of unorganized material. And that website ended up taking over a year to produce because it was just such a tough thing. And I charged them the estimate that I gave them, but if I actually counted the hours, I'm sure it wouldn't have worked out very well. But to have one person kind of driving it, just like you've all been to really efficient committee meetings and really horrible committee meetings, and the leader makes such a difference that they're able to drive it forward and have conversations and then be able to wrap up conversations. And that goes such a long way. It can't be underestimated.
All right. Any last questions? All right. I know that Antoine, did you have something to add? I know you're unmuted, but I can't actually hear you.
Okay, you can hear me now?
Yep.
Yes.
Sorry, I was routed through my my microphone for like Sunday worship. So one of the things I noticed, it's weird. It's more of an observation than a question, and I was hoping maybe you guys could provide insight to it. Is I don't know if it's necessarily the traffic, but our views on Google, like who's been, you know how you can get updated on who's been searching your business. It's showing like it's down. And I'm curious as to, you know, are people just going directly to the website? Like, what's happening with that? Have you guys noticed that?
Where is it down, Antoine? Are you talking about the website count is down, or Facebook live stream views, or?
So when you attach, you know how Google has the business thing, and you attach an email, and it connects it with the church, like for our YouTube channel. That's the one I put there, but it's with our church. And so like I'm able to see who's searching Abundant Life Church in our area, like how many times it's been searched, how many times people have actually gone to the website, or how many times people have called the numbers. Those numbers are what's down.
I don't know. That could be a number of different things. It could be just.
Chris, I think we lost your audio.
Okay, I thought it was me.
Hi guys, this is Linda. I noticed that when our Facebook numbers are up, our Google business numbers are down.
Oh, okay.
Can't say that I have experienced that. I'm not sure. I would look at the other analytics available. So while you may see that people are searching less for Abundant Life Church in whatever town you're in, they may be going directly to your website because they've already discovered it. I would compare stats. How's overall traffic? Is it indirect or is it direct, or how are people getting to your site? And look at the source too, where they're coming from. And then you may also just want to look at, what other content from churches is out there too, because maybe people are just getting overloaded with different church content on YouTube from your area, or I don't know. I think there could be a lot of players in that, but I'm not real sure. Chris, do you have anything to add?
No. Is my audio working now? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, great. No, I was going to add to what Brian said and say I don't think the analytics numbers that people are getting on multiple levels right now are truly long-term or organic, because people's web use is so different right now because they're stuck at home, or they're stuck here, or their kids are, it's just not a normal situation, at least in the Decker household. It's not. Maybe in yours it is. But whatever you're seeing, I wouldn't get too worried about it. Once things get back to normal, whatever that means, I would take a long measuring stick, like 6 months or a year, and then, start to see trends, and then play around with different things that might affect trends. Send out mailers or Facebook posts or something, and see what's effective and what doesn't work.
Yeah, absolutely. Any last comments or questions? I know that a lot of you have been messaging in the chat, and some of you have tried messaging me directly. I've tried answering everything, but if I miss something, or if you have follow-up questions, feel free to contact me directly. Again, my email, the easiest one to remember, is info@churchjuice.com. So feel free to email me or get a hold of me and ask questions, and I can put you in contact with Chris, or Chris, if you want to throw your contact information in the chat before we sign off, you can do that there too. All right, everybody. Well, thank you for joining us today. I hope that you found it beneficial. We'll gather up again on, what's today? Today's Thursday. So on Tuesday, we'll gather up again, 2:00 Eastern time. We'll try and keep it to probably 30 minutes next week. Yeah, just go from there. Hope you guys have a great weekend, okay?
Thanks, everybody. See ya.